So hi everyone, welcome back for most of you, I guess. As was already told to you, my name is Lianne Toussaint. I'm a PhD student at the Radboud University in Nijmegen in the Netherlands. Started in September with a research on wearable technology that's focusing on the social and cultural aspects and implications of wearable technology, actually, which is a project that's really trying in general to reflect on wearable technology, certain developments, and also to take a step back and look at it from a distance, asking questions. So, what kind of developments are interesting, or have a lot of potential? What kind of developments are maybe less interesting or have less potential? So that's what I'm focusing on right now. I'm really in the first phase of my research, but curious to see what the speakers of today will have to say about this. And I will start with the three presentations. The first of them is Troy. So I'd like to ask him to start presenting his work, and he will introduce himself further.
I'll try at least. Good morning, welcome. I'm Troy Nachtigall. I am the design chair for the ASWIC, the International Symposium on Wearable Computing. We're looking forward to seeing all of your projects in the design competition this year. It's going to be at Seattle at the Science Fiction Museum, so it's a great year to do something wild and crazy. Please do that. I work with Plug-and-Wear. I'm a designer with Plug-and-Wear. We make textile sensors. I am the research coordinator at the Institute of European Design, and I run the Textile Innovation Group, Socio-Cultural, which is our group where we are working on building new sensors and building new textiles, using the textile industry in Florence and around Florence to create new sectors and to keep them alive. I'm part of Wearables for Italy as well. We are a research team between several different universities that is constantly pushing forward wearables, movie workshops, and many of you have seen at these workshops around the world. FutureBot is kid stuff, so if you want wearables for kids. Unfortunately, when we think about wearable technology, we usually think about this, and it's unfortunate that this is the first thing that comes into most people's minds. And especially when we're talking about the socio-cultural sense, this is what people think of when they start looking at wearables. Or even worse, they start thinking about things like this, the idea of extreme functionality, which just doesn't work anymore. And what we're looking for and trying to get something into is new projects that can actually make this more relevant to our social culture. This is a project that I've been working on called Superfluous. It's part of our research into emotional states and how we can use wearables to find an emotional state and using the pad model to figure out exactly how the person's feeling based upon how they're walking. When we're sad, we walk differently than when we're happy. When we're angry, or when we're in the club, we're doing different movements. And we can sense these, and we can start to build an emotional profile on the person based upon their walking. And we've been working with, I presented with Zoe here last week in Milan at Code in Motion doing research on this, and that's a fun project. They asked me to show some of my past work, so just give you a little bit of there and where it's going to be going. I started off by doing 3D scanning for design analysis at the University of Venice, and we were 3D scanning with early 3D scanners. I mean, this was 2006, so not so technological back then. But trying to figure out how we can make things fit better, how we can integrate better into clothing. And this turned into design development, and we did a lot of graphic placement using these 3D kind of programs. So especially with graphics, we're already there. The companies in Italy are definitely using it for this. And this is one of the companies we were working with called Filati Viaggioli. They do cashmere sweaters for most of the world. But what we started doing is a lot of video projection for them. This is the presentation at Pitti Filati, the textile fair. But they're using it in their design room because we can replicate the colors exactly how they would print out on different kinds of knitwear, especially cashmere knitwear, exactly. So we can prototype things up rapidly in video, and I think that part of wearable technology is just this rapid prototyping that's allowing us to make things faster and easier. I mean, these are all projected videos. It's the exact same one you're seeing over and over again. But we can even do video, we can do fun kind of stuff like that, but what it really gives us a nice sense of how it's going to feel and look when it's a finished product. My background is really in interactive felt as well. I really love felting. I will felt anything. I make my own conducted yarn, L-wire, LEDs. I did a project for the Museum of Modern Art in Rome, which was 100 meters of this felted L-wire, all done by hand. It was tremendous. But it's definitely something that's an emotional state, but we need to move beyond just the blinky dress, and that's unfortunately what those shoes represent. So what I'm looking at today is things like easel. Oops. What did I push? I'm sorry.
Okay.
I crashed the program. I'm fantastic at this kind of stuff. Anyway, easel is just simple integration. I mean, when we talk about the symposium on wearable computing, we have 8 major sections that we're trying to work on. Wearability and washability are definitely 2 of the major things out there that we're always constantly struggling with. But these little brackets that you saw for 2 seconds before they popped up, simply hold your microcontrollers on to your clothing. And when it comes time to wash them, you can easily and simply pop them off. And so please take a look at those. I have them up on GitHub. I have them up on Thingiverse. If you have a 3D printer, you can print out your own. You can open them on Shapeways. It's just something that, let's see, the PDF version probably will open faster.
So this one?
No.
Oh,
Yeah,
this
there we
one.
go. There we go. Okay, we'll jump ahead here. Yeah, there we go. Easel and leapfrog. If we can make it easier to integrate technology into our clothing, it's going to be lots easier for it to get to start communicating with our iPhones, with our Androids, with our digital devices. So part of that is being able to attach it easily and simply, and yet reliably. Part of the problem that we have, especially when we're using sensors, accelerometers, IMUs of any type, is that they're not making tight enough contact with the body, and we get a lot of noisy data. So this is just part of that, making that easy to get really clean data. This is a project I've been working on with Fendi. It's called Fatto a Mano for the Future, Made by Hand for the Future. We've been exploring the use of wearable textiles inside of robotics. What we've been doing is taking the simple Nachtigall lamp that now IKEA makes for €8 completely. Back in the 1920s, it was the coolest lamp out there. But what we've been doing is not only covering these in leather and making them move, kind of trying to replicate the Pixar lamp, we've been adding textiles underneath the leather here to give it a sense and a feel of being able to touch it. And it's not only having a sensor that you can touch and it knows it's being touched, it also gives a feeling that's much like human tissue. And so in the socio-cultural sense, we need to take these sensors and help make things more relational. Professor Annalisa Franco said it's time we stop treating people like objects and start treating objects like people. So the more that we can make objects human-like, the more that we'll interact with them and turn into something that completely builds a better relationship. This is a project I did called Hands Off. It's the airbag for personal space. There are 2 textile sensors here in the sides, and if you engage both sensors at the same time, this skirt, which is in Tyvek, also inflates, giving you and creating personal space. So there's this idea of creating a social space that is completely based upon literally physically pushing people out and around from you. I think that, especially in the socio-cultural scene, one of the things that we're seeing a lot, especially at ISWIC and at the international conferences, is this idea that we're living in a video state. Everything is recorded all the time. But one of the benefits of this, and we can argue whether or not having a state that's completely under video all the time is a good thing, but one of the benefits is that people aren't as scared to show their technology and display their technology. So we're making bags that use a DJ monome tool. So a DJ could literally be walking down the street with a pair of headphones, DJing only for themselves. And there's this idea of being able to show off and display your technology in a certain fashionable sort of sense and way. And I definitely think it's one of the major adaptations that's happening now that people aren't scared that it's going to be stolen almost immediately. So you've got that complete change that's going on. The other part that we've had a real struggle with, and this is the first time I'm presenting this here today, is finding interoperability and design standards. It's always been a real struggle in doing wearables to find a way to make it communicate in a way that everybody can use the data and all the different devices can use the data. With the development of Bluetooth Light Edition, Bluetooth 4.0, I'm sure you've all been digging right into that. It's incredible. One of the most interesting things we get off of that is a very, very cheap, inexpensive protocol that can send information back and forth between your computing devices. So you can send it to your iPhone, to your iPad, to your Android, very simply. So we no longer need to do the computation inside the device. And so we're getting this remote computation. The problem there being interoperability and design standards. So what we're doing with Wearable OS in Florence is we're creating a unified standard that'll make it very easy for your Arduino, for your LilyPad, to talk via Bluetooth Light Edition directly to your iPhone, to your device, using a visual IDE that makes it really interactive and very easy to connect to it. If you're a company like Nike or Apple, it's very easy to do wearable technology. They have the programmers, they have the designers, they have lots of people. If you're a smaller, mid-sized company, though, and I'm talking about even companies like Fendi, Prada, Gucci, classic Italian brands, you don't have the capacity to bring in the programmers to create your own ecosystem. So we're trying to create a unified ecosystem that any company can adapt and use very simply, using the technology that's almost commonplace and off the shelf at this point, such as the Arduino. So check out Wearable OS. We're launching our Kickstarter at the end of May, so as part of our research division. That's it. You can find me here. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer it. We have lots of researchers doing lots of great stuff, so please.
Okay, thank you, Troy. I forgot to tell you that we actually have quite some time for a Q&A after the three presentations, so if you have some questions or remarks or whatever, then please save them until after the three presentations. Okay, then up next is Ricardo. And let me just grab the time
Well, yeah, I introduce myself. My name is Ricardo. I am an artist and I am the founder of a lab/studio called PopCalab. And in this presentation I will talk a little bit of PopCalab, what we do, and I will show some projects that we did this year. And actually PopCalab, it's based in Rotterdam. It's a studio, it's me and some other people. I have some engineers, some 3D designers, some fashion designers that we work together. And I wrote here that this is our motto, we create experiences. Because for us, actually, the final product is not as important as what it triggers on person. So, of course, we want to make a beautiful piece at the end, but what is important for us is what is the relation between this piece and the people who is seeing, or who is wearing it, or who is experiencing this. So that's why I say we create experiences. And so I will talk about two projects that we did. Maybe I do this myself. Oh yeah. This is a project that I did last year. No, this year in September. Sorry, for the New York Fashion Week. Motorola was launching the new Moto X. It's a phone that they were launching, and they asked Cool Hunting to create a sort of exhibition during the New York Fashion Week to boost the cell phone. And then Cool Hunting Mondial, which is a company from Sabine Simbor, they asked me to develop a piece that uses their cell phone and connect with wearables, so I did Jump. Jump is this sneaker. They put me together with a fashion brand called Opening Ceremony, and they have done this sneaker with Adidas, so Opening Ceremony Adidas, and they gave the sneaker to me to hack the sneaker. So what it does, it's a sneaker. Actually it enables the wearer to live both a physical and a virtual path. So it's like this. When you walk, the shoe detects your walks, and more important, detects when you jump. So, and if you are in a place and you like this place, you jump one time, you post on Twitter your location of where you are. If you jump 2 times, you post a picture from Google Maps of this location of where you are. And if you jump 3 times, you put a pin in a personalized Google Maps of where you were. So then afterwards, by the end of the day, you can look at your account at Google Maps and see where you were, the pictures you took, what you did during the day. And so, and this actually all this functionality, it's on the cell phone. There was an app that we developed an app to do this, and the shoes was only the sensing part. So this was last year. So here you have some pictures. Then on the right you have the cell phone with a picture of the street. And all the electronics are embedded in the shoes, in this part here. I don't know how do you say it in English. You know, this part of the sneaker.
The tongue.
The tongue, exactly. It's in the tongue of the sneakers. So yeah, so this was for opening ceremony, and they like it very much. It was very funny to see people like jumping. And we made two pieces. This is the type of picture that posts, because it's from Google Maps, right? So it grabs your geolocation and posts this kind of picture. And this is how your tweet account looks like. So like just arrive, that's the address, that's the picture. You can add hashtags to the post. Another project that I want to talk about is this one that you can see on the exhibition downstairs. It's called Recording Shoes. I did in collaboration with Blaze. Blaze is it's a fashion brand based in Berlin and in Paris, and we made this edition called number 45 Sound Perfume. Actually, we create 3 pieces. If you have time, I can show the other ones around the idea of sound perfume. So we were working with wearables and sounds. This was the topic. And then this was a commission from the MAC in Vienna, the Museum of Applied Arts in Vienna. It was exhibited there during 3 months. And these shoes, it works like this. You see here, there's these little holes. There's a speaker inside the heel. And all the electronics are inside the heel, actually. So the shoes detects when you start walking and records the sound of your walking. So all this it records, and then when you stop, it plays it back, as if you were keep walking. So our idea actually is to create a sort of sound confusion. You know, I stop, but I still hear the sound of my steps, and then you get a little bit disoriented by the shoes. So by like misplacing the sound, we want to misplace the sound with this strangeness. And one thing that I thought you would be curious to see how the electronics look like inside the shoe. So this is the whole system. The walking is detected by a normal pressure sensor. That square. Here is the battery, a little battery. That one is the speaker, which is embedded in the heel. There's a little microphone that records, and here is the whole processor and stuff. We wanted to make this into. We still want to turn this into a product, and therefore we did first a prototype in Arduino to prove the concept, and then we decided to design our own board, our own everything. So do not use Arduino because we want to have this. Turn into a product, and I guess we cannot use it just right. I have a video, maybe you can, now that we have time. Yeah. Is that?
Yeah, these are pictures from the development, like trying to figure out how to fix things, and I did it right.
But to see as well.
Yeah. This is the you see, I was feeling like a dentist,
And the knitting of the rest of the shoe?
This is a black design.
Okay.
Yeah, the shoe's black design. This is the whole system. Like the
Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to show you the people walking in the shoes. You can go downstairs afterwards. I'm gonna try to make someone wear it so you can really see it working. It's not just see the pedestal makes no much sense. And do we have a little bit of time? Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk just quickly about another project related to the sound perfume idea that we did at Mark Museum. We developed a scarf, which is, maybe I should, sorry. Yeah, it's this one. It's called Orchestra Scarf. It's a 5 minutes video. I will just put a little bit further.
The whole thing here, this one, and then you also have the volume control. Yeah, of course. Here you have the volume.
So yeah, I will let's just put it down, and then I say we did this scarf, and it's actually we call it sound scarf, and it has different types of fasteners here that you can close in a different way. And each button you close, you trigger a different track of a song. So you can remix the music by the way you wear the scarf. You will see now. You can put louder a little bit.
Now it's,
Yeah, this is the one. So you know, you just close here, and then you listen the different tracks. And the speakers are embedded in these buttons. We 3D print a button and put a speaker inside, so we could hide the speakers on the design of the piece. And the idea here is actually really like when you wake up, you wear your perfume, so you choose how will be your smell. But you cannot choose how you will sound. So that was our idea. So you could in the morning say, today I feel like sounding like violin. And then you just wear it in a way that you only listen to violins. And this is also something, a piece that we are pushing into create a product out of it, where you can put your own music and remix your own music and change this music. I think that's it. Thank you. If you want, you can see like my website, popmalab.com. There are like other projects there if you're interested. And yeah, thank you.
Right. So then our final speaker for today. This is Annalisa.
We need to change computer.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, good morning. My name is Annalisa Simonella. Every time people ask me what I do, I always find that it takes quite a lot of time to explain. So I will start from the beginning. So this slide summarizes what I've been doing in most of my working life. My background is actually in building engineering, and I've helped designing buildings that perform efficiently and that create comfortable conditions for the occupants. So here we have a person who needs to be kept at the right temperature, and a building which needs to be designed appropriately. So, for example, reducing the energy consumption, reducing the heat loss. And I'm specialized in the building envelope, which is the skin of the building. So that's the element that filters air, heat, and light. And its design is shaped by climate. And it's also very important, it has a very important role in defining the aesthetics of the building. So I worked on a number of different projects, including actually this building, briefly. And I've been involved in adaptive facades using innovative materials as well. But I have a quite strong interest in user-centered design. In my experience, I found that quite rarely the building design is looking at how to keep people comfortable within buildings. But if we look at comfort, what is comfort? If we look at thermal comfort in building science, this is defined as how people react to a certain environment, which is temperature, humidity, and airspeed, depending on what they do and how they are dressed. So we use a scale going from -3 to +3, -3 meaning feeling cold, and +3 meaning feeling warm. So you would imagine that in the neutral position everyone would be happy, but still, because comfort is a quite personal concept, there is a percentage of people unhappy. And actually in building design we accept to have about 50% of people unhappy with the condition. So I thought, would it be ideal to create a microclimate around each person, so allowing the individual to control its own environment rather than relying on a building which is designed for the average person. So in order to address this and also to pursue my interest in user-centered design, I decided to move from the building envelope to a more personal envelope. And there is actually quite a lot in common between building skins and clothes. For example, lots of innovative materials used in the construction industry are actually embedded in textiles as well, and vice versa. So I created a brand called Annalisa, and I moved from looking at physical comfort of people within buildings to looking at trying to create a microhabitat around what I call the urban dweller, who's someone living in a large city, spending most of their time outside their homes and like going through different environments and wanting to feel comfortable. So I started looking not just at the material comfort, so the physical comfort, but also at the more psychological comfort. So trying to see how to keep people, so you have to make people feel confident, feel cozy, safe, so to create a sort of shelter around them to protect them. So I started designing a series of clothes, of garments that are transforming in order to adapt to climate and to social context as well. In order to sort of allow the wearer to have an enhanced functionality. So this is one of the examples. So it's a skirt with an overskirt which becomes a cape. And the idea here is also to respond to the temperature, but is as well to be able to go from, for example, an office environment where a simple skirt would be quite suitable to wear, to have an outfit which may be elegant enough to go to the opera, for example, or another fancy event. This is another example. It's a pattern which changes color depending on climate. So the idea here was to have, when it's cold, the blue appears, and when it's exposed to sunlight, the orange appears. So it's using photochromic and thermochromic dyes. And this is applied, screen printed on a shrug, which can be worn as a belt and as a stole as well, and it's also reversible, it's just black on the other side. And here again, there is this idea of responding to climate, so trying to make the person feel warmer, and also maybe like change the look of like a dress, maybe quite simple, but it was also trying to stimulate an emotional response which is triggered by climate, both in the wearer and in the people surrounding her. And this is my last example, and here I found a connection with my favorite toy, Lego. So going from a sort of modular construction toy to what I call a modular fashion system. So this concept is, it's a top with attachments, multiple attachments for sleeves and for skirts. It has buttons at the armholes and at the waist. And again, in addition to being transformable, this can actually be customizable as well, because the person at the moment of buying, they can choose which attachments to buy, so they can actually co-create a garment which will be different from what another person will choose. The other idea with this is to try and allow the customer to spread the cost over time, because they can buy like certain attachments when they the first moment, but then I would like to make other attachments available season after season, so that they can maybe decide to buy something else later on. I'm also committed to create sustainable products, so not just addressing ethical and environmental issues with the choice of materials and production, but also try to create something which can be used and cherished for a long time. And with this example, I was really trying to create a wardrobe, a whole wardrobe in one outfit, so that this allows people to transform what they have, but without the need to shop too often. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you once again to all the speakers. Now I'd like to open the discussion to all of you. If you have any questions or remarks, I have quite a few questions myself, so we'll get to that later, but at least I want to give you a chance to respond first. So are there any questions, recommendations, critical remarks? Yes?
This is for Ricardo. I know today and yesterday are all about wearables in products, but I would have thought your projects are perfect for performance, and I wondered if you had ever worked with performers.
Yeah, sure. I work a lot with performance, actually, way more than, I never managed to actually make a product yet. And yeah, I work a lot with performance. For example, these shoes, when they were at the museum in Vienna, we asked dancers to wear the shoes and perform with them, and yes, there's a really close connection with performance.
Anything else? It's all perfectly clear.
I've got one for Annalisa.
Oh.
The dress, the clothes, in what way are they user-centered? I mean, did your methodology involve asking women if they would want that dress, for example? Yes. Or are you basing it on assumptions?
Well, I was initially based on sort of personal experience, because I was living in London, so I had this thing where I wanted to have something with like more functionalities than just normal clothes. So I think it was based on me really, but it would be quite quite interesting to see like how other people would think about it. Yeah, because it was quite a lot about moving from like working with buildings to working more with individuals, and so really trying to create something that buildings would do, but that I can wear as well. So it's sort of like giving more than just clothes. Yeah.
It's just that the whole thing about clothing is there's such a sort of psychological involvement with one's clothes that I wonder if it would involve a lot of research into just how we look at our clothes and what we want from them, and also retail therapy and actually going out to buy a new dress is all part of.
I know, yeah. But because I'm trying to address sustainability as well, I think people want to change all the time. So it's really trying to meet this need with maybe like a need to reduce the excessive consumerism.
Interesting.
process of creation. Usually you have to start from the idea and go to the physical prototype. If you have like an idea of what is the technology around, and then you start from the idea and then you see if you can do it and how to do it, or you start being always aware of what's the technology around and then shape your ideas based on that, on knowing what's around and what you can do.
For me, yes, yeah.
With,
I think I'm probably looking at both. Yeah, so looking a bit what the needs could be from the person, and then maybe what's the technology. Yet I haven't introduced much technology in my clothes. I'm quite interested as well in using maybe like innovative textiles. So I think I'm actually looking for both sides and try to combine both, like using technology and trying to satisfy certain needs for people.
Can I respond to that really quick as well?
Yes, of course.
For me, I think it's miniaturization. I mean, there's been many ideas that for years we've all wanted to do, but only in this last recent period things have gotten small enough, especially batteries, have come down to a size where we can really integrate it, as Ricardo did, straight into the button. We can make things incredibly small now. That's allowed us to really push things forward and come up, to implement ideas that perhaps we had even 15, 20 years ago and turn it into something now because the technology has finally caught up with what textiles could do.
Well, that is answer as well. But for me, I mean, the process is I assume that everything is possible from the beginning. So I don't think about technology or anything. Just think about the idea, and of course, then it narrows down to the reality. It's say, okay, we cannot do that, and then it changes a little bit. But when we are like, I work out in collaboration with other people, and when we are brainstorming and having ideas, I don't like to have any constraint. Just let it go, let it flow, and then afterwards we solve what to do, because everything is just a matter of money and time actually.
Also, a question for Troy in your role as important in this week, because I've been there over the years and realised the absolute sort of holes apart between electronics, geeky guys quite often, and fashion, and how when ISWIC does take clothing on board, they see it as being rather sensational. And you talked about science fiction already in terms of the next event. Do you think they are beginning to realise that there's a whole raft of stuff that needs to be done between those two streams?
Well, there was a change in ISWIC a few years ago when they left the they became ASM instead of IEEE. They left the Electronic Engineers Association and became into machine computing, which changed the idea that it wasn't just electronic engineers that were there trying to present their newest gadget, their coolest, newest way of computing. And so there's definitely been a more design integration into ISWIC, and there's been a series of us who are just pure designers who are going there and trying to address the design needs, the ethics of all of this as well. And it's turned into something where even in the design competition, we've broken it down by design and functional. So there's definitely the aesthetic category and the functional category. But as we create these exhibits, and as we did last year, in Zurich, we definitely tried to put those, looking at each other and create a confrontation between them, so we can start to really look at where does functionality meet aesthetic, and how can we make them actually do both, because the best projects do both.
I think it's just the hierarchy of research. Always it comes out that the technology, the electronics seem to be the important stuff, and the textiles and clothing seem to be slightly frivolous.
I think it comes down to the fact that technology gets better funding these days.
Yeah, well, that's
Entirely.
what we had to do. We had to put technology into get funding.
You add technology to it and you get funding. You don't put you put textile process and you don't get funding. So you've got to be like, I'm doing technology, not textile process, or I'm doing technology on textile machines. And then they start to talk to you. If you're talking about, I'm doing textile machines with technology, nobody wants to listen to you.
So how do we deal with this huge problem? Because it's not going away. That's why we're still waiting to have this happening in for real people.
I think it's a marketing question, and I think that's really a funny way of going at it. But if Apple's going to sell technology like it's fashion, we have to sell fashion like it's technology. What we've forgotten how to do as a fashion industry is communicate the benefits of what our garments do for us. Why do we wear wool in the wintertime? I mean, that's a simple one. But what about viscosa? What about cupro? What about all these other textiles and the innate properties that they have inside of them and the benefits that these transmit to the person? And it's something that the technology market does really well. They only talk about what their garment does really well. Fashion is just like, oh, it's that. Go, please, wear it. If we go back to a point where we're communicating benefits and we're marketing, what this will do for you and how this will improve your life, we're going to see a larger interest in the fashion end of things.
So if we're going to go and buy these things, what sort of things like that are we going to get these from? An electronics price from or clothing price?
Yeah, that's where I think it becomes really interesting. I think you can do both. I mean, I'd like to see more clothing inside electronic stores. Electronic stores are where the retail market is right now. I mean, how many people have a phone that costs more than 500 euros in their pocket versus how many people have a garment on that costs more than 500 euros? In the 1980s, everybody would have like a jacket that costs more than 500 euros on, but nowadays nobody does. Everybody has their phone, which is the expensive part. So we need to find that way of bringing fashion back into that game and into that luxury market.
If there are no other urgent questions for now, then, there
Can I
is.
just ask, try a bit more about the wearable OS stuff? You've been having a quick look at it, and what exactly is it? Is it something that runs like on the microcontroller and on your device? Or is it like an IDE?
It is an implementation of Bluetooth 4.0,
Right.
which will allow you to very simply use your textile sensors. This is a button that we make, and very easily integrate with a Bluetooth device, which is a low-energy Bluetooth device, so you can have a battery that lasts up to a year that can communicate directly back to your portable device. What this allows us to do is move most of the computation off the actual textile end of things and move it into your cell phone, which has a large amount of computing capacity. So what we're doing is simply just trying to take the analog information that we're getting from sensors and the analog information that you're getting from like the walking, the sound, and moving that over to something that's more capable of computing it.
Right, so you basically like sort of on your microphone, on your Arduino or whatever, you don't do any computation there, you do everything, you just collect the data, send it to your phone, put it all there, send it back.
Sends it back to the Arduino to communicate.
Right.
Yeah, and you develop an interesting relationship there. And it's not just doing in the cell phone. When it gets to be really dynamic, you're doing a little bit of both in both devices, and you can get some very interesting stuff coming out.
Okay, now maybe I would like to ask you some questions, and I'd actually like to start with a pretty critical one, if that's all right with you. So no offense, but this session was actually called the Socio-Cultural Wearable, and I heard this questions being raised yesterday a little bit already as well, but I'm dealing with this myself in my research all the time, looking at it from a distance, these developments. I can see that in Annalisa's projects there is some kind of, okay, we need to look at sustainability, at consumer culture, so this conspicuous consumption going on. There's like this endless productioning and buying and throwing away fashion in the fashion system, and at the same time we're all buying the newest model when it comes to, for example, smartphones. Which obviously seems to go together very well. So their fashion and technology, or their temporality, seems to team up very well. But at the same time, when I look at all these developments, which can be very expressive or very aesthetic, or performative for that reason, for that matter, what actually would or could be or should be the social added value of integrating fashion and technology, wearable devices? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when I create a wearable piece, actually, I'm not really trying to make things more efficient. I'm not trying to teach people or force them to have a certain behavior, to exercise more, or to have a correct, to see correctly. This actually doesn't really matter too much for me. What I'm interested in is, as I said, is to make people happy. I mean, it's something. Maybe it sounds a bit silly, but my work is not about efficiency. It's not about actually functionality, but it's about more how you feel, right? Experience that. And for example, in the jump, the shoes here, it was very interesting that I told you that if I gave this to some people, and these people look like crazy, like jumping around by themselves, and you know, and having fun by themselves. That they look like a fool a little bit, but they are really enjoy the experience. And also the recording shoes, that when you stop, you hear the sound. And sometimes there's an extra functionality. If you keep walking, it will broadcast. And something very interesting happened, that people will start to synchronize their walk with the sound of their past walk. So, you know, like, these are all side effects of the pieces that are not really thought in the beginning, but can, I mean, maybe shape a certain social behavior or trigger some interesting feeling in the person. Yeah, that's
so it's like it can function as an intervention then in human behavior or social communication by maybe addressing some of the ways we move, or also the way we move around each other in social space.
Yeah.
So that's one of the outcomes. But still, you're basically saying, okay, for me this is really still an experimental phase. So I up front I don't know what's going to happen. I just see what works and how it all works out in the end, and then see how it works in a social context. And I don't think about that up front.
No, I don't think because actually we need like research and test, and you know, I don't know you guys, but I never have time and money to do that. You know, we just make the thing and give to people, and they experiment. This is also because I never had the opportunity to really develop a product with the, you know, like real phase, like user tests and stuff. I don't have opportunity with this.
We are doing research into this, and I think one of the more interesting areas in the socio-cultural aspect right now is group activity recognition. The fact that, you know, we're moving beyond what we can understand with a wearable. When we talk about an individual person, yes, there are aesthetic and functional benefits, posture, even in the long term, where we can understand how people are walking over 20 years, these kind of things that are very important. But I think where the real innovation, where we can really get interesting data right now, is when we start looking at what people are doing as a group and what these group activities are. And if we can combine the sensors from many people at one time, can we understand who's speaking right now? Am I a speaker, or am I sitting in the audience? Am I playing soccer? Which position am I playing on the soccer field? Am I the goalie, or am I right up front attacking? You know, it's starting to get to this point where we can really understand more of what you're doing on a daily basis based upon your clothing, based upon your sensors in your cell phone, and taking that data and turning that into something more interesting, whether it is expressive or functional. It's the understanding your role in society and understanding your role at the moment and how those can dynamically change, you know, as I pass the ball back to you.
Yeah, well, I can see why it would be very relevant, maybe even there might even be an urgency in the fact that the added value of technology can be that it actually monitors or registers behavior that we're unaware of or that we don't notice, especially over a long time. So we don't notice how our postures have changed over the past century, for example, which is something that technology may be able to tell us in the long term. So I can see why that would be of added value. I just think that it's interesting to see that often something is designed just for the reason of designing, so technology for the sake of technology, and then it's out there, and then the question is what can people do with it? What will happen? Shouldn't it be tested in that same context? So I keep on wondering, when I see all these things produced or all the ideas that are coming together, how could we, you know, turn it into an actual cycle in which we test and check and cross-check and then develop further. So this is also something that we're trying to do with the project that I'm in right now. But it's something that I find very, very interesting out of this field.
Well, it's something that the big companies are doing right now already, and that we're trying to get it to create an open source version of it as well. Is simply creating the big data, because as Ricardo said, it's hard to get the research right now. And if we can create the big databases of what we can read off of sensors and where people are at, who they're interacting with, and how they're interacting, you know, you hand that to the programmers who are really good at looking at statistical analysis and finding those gold, those pieces of gold, those gems. I think it's really, we are in a research phase in that sense. And if we can just create a big database that we can let people plug into, they're going to find things.
Yeah. Okay. There's another question that that I've been wondering about. And that is actually the kind of issues that you're having to overcome on a daily basis in trying to integrate different disciplines with each other, engineering, biology maybe, but also fashion. So the aesthetic factor, which is very important. I think in your work it's very clear that it relates to the world of fashion as well, and that it tunes into the constantly changing system. So it's adaptable, it's dynamic, so it tunes into the fashion industry as a whole. But what are the kind of issues that you have to overcome, or problems that you're dealing with on a daily basis that you think you would most like to change in the future or develop further?
But for me, it's actually like really the fashion world, because what I'm trying to do is probably different from most of sort of conventional fashion. So I'm trying to actually bring my product to market, and yet I haven't found a way where I can do this effectively, because if I sell, say, online, that would be sort of the easiest way, but then people always want to try on the clothes. I mean, there is auto-body scanning and all of that going on at the moment as well, but I think sort of a more conventional fashion world is still very, very strong and very established. So it would be great to have a place for something that is different as well, which is maybe not like sportswear or outerwear, so like more like clothes for extreme situation, but something in between, something with added functionality, but still part of the more day-to-day fashion.
Yeah, because there's a lot to gain there. If you can see that in the world of fashion right now, sustainability is one of the biggest issues or points of discussion, and you can see why technology could actually be a threat to sustainability, because there's all this energy supply needed in order for it to function. So that's another problem popping up. But at the same time, maybe it can actually add to making fashion as a system, but also daily fashion more sustainable.
Yeah.
So
it depends as well on how we define sustainability, because there are so many aspects to it. So sometimes I'm thinking like, okay, if we use some electronics within our clothes, but then we can actually source the energy also from our clothes, like having some solar cells or using kinetic chemicals. So it's like a system that is feeding itself. Or like looking at materials as well, maybe using materials for their appropriateness to the use. So some materials may be very durable when we need it. Some other materials may be having a sort of planned obsolescence so that they can be biodegradable when we don't use them anymore. So we always to try and maybe reduce the environmental footprint.
And taking that into account before actually designing something may also add to it being more marketable or more culturally accepted as well, I guess, so that it gets out of the realm of gadgetry. Troy, you
No, I'm excited
something.
about these just because it's for me it's the difficulty that I see in Italy is communication.
Okay.
We see a lot of functional product because it's very easy for functional designers. If you're working for a snowboarding company, you can talk to programmers and engineers very easily. But when you're working on an aesthetic product, you have to put engineers together with artists and designers. And you have to, the people in this room are really the bridge between that very often. We're capable of speaking both languages and very often translating between the two. And that's the challenge of right now, is getting enough people that are capable of not only speaking to programmers and electronic engineers, but also coming back and be able to talk about aesthetics and art and cultural movements and trends and tendencies.
Yeah, and that can be both, of course, these crossovers can be both a source of inspiration and a source of frustration, I guess.
They're both things that require a high level of very complicated knowledge, and having both is difficult.
And communicative skills.
And having the communicative skills to express it.
Okay, I don't know how many time you still got left. No time left? 3 minutes? Are there any other questions or issues that you think should really be addressed? Yeah?
I'm working in fashion industry, and I just want to say, as you said in the last, I think it's really important that technology also really integrates creatives, because what Ricardo is doing is really fun, and why not do sustainable fun as well? Because sustainable always comes across boring and not exciting, but I think it's important that have that knowledge and make it exciting with blend these two words, because that's where the magic happens. So,
I love the Fab Lab movement that's happening right now, just because it's one place where we've got one in Florence that's got a soft Fab Lab, but you can get engineers that actually want to talk to fashion people, and then so you have at least a place to start the conversation, and then you can start thinking about sustainability as well, which is important. But it's getting that process down first.
Yeah, and also it's also the element of fun, or the kind of interventions that you were talking about may add to kind of animating technology as well. So you were discussing trying to consider these technological objects a bit more human, so considering something that's vivid, that's alive, and these elements of fun can also add to that a little bit maybe as well, so that it seems more appealing, this technology. It's not just far away from us, hardware kind of technology, but soft, something that involves touch, emotion, affective aspects that can also make it more easily be sold or culturally accepted by a bigger group of people. So, yeah. There are some more fingers, 2 more, and then we really have to wrap it up.
Yeah, no, I was interested, maybe Troy could give me an answer to that, because we see a lot of prototypes and ideas being developed and often crafted by one person or a small team. But what is needed from the fashion industry to implement the technologies in the production chain and to produce them at a larger scale, and then to see how, where does it come in, how does it trickle down, how do we deal with guarantees, repairs, and services that are attached to the product once it's installed?
The legal aspects of this are incredible. I've had projects for Ducati, which Ducati actually paid for, but Ducati can't produce them because of the legal aspects of exactly this, of warranties. And the law that surrounds fashion is very old and outdated. It goes back at least 300 years in most of Europe as to what content labeling, all of this is. And yet electronics have a whole different legal system, and it's bringing the two of those together that we really do need some lawyers to work on that. But the other part of that situation, though, is getting out to the production. It's been a really interesting year for me. I just got back from Istanbul because I was going to see where Prada and Miu Miu are making their handbags now. And as production has moved out of Europe and into those more Eastern European countries, we really, as designers, have to get out there and talk to the companies. It's been really interesting getting out there and working with companies and going through the entire production process, going through the lines and seeing all of that. But the people that we're meeting over there, lots of those people have engineering degrees that have been opening these companies, so you've got to be able to get there. If you can get there, you can talk to people. The people that are very open and receptive to it. The problem is the distance and figuring out where these places in the middle of nowhere in Turkey are at this point.
One final extremely simple question. I think there was.
Yeah, my question's for Annalisa, which was, by introducing your garments into the architecture, what impact does that addition have on the first system? So on the building, does that have an impact on the building itself?
I was thinking about trying to create something that would disjoint from the building, because I'm also thinking about a possible future scenario where maybe we won't have all the energy we have at the moment. The energy will be much more expensive. We would have maybe old buildings that they need to be refurbished, and perhaps there aren't any money to refurbish them. So, like, again, trying to focus on something which was relatively easier and cheaper than building. So it was really trying to sort of disjoint the two things. But again, it's also trying to adapt to the conditions. So if a building is already comfortable, maybe I can wear my garment in a certain way, while if it's a bit too cold, then I can modify it. But it was also to look at how this affects comfort when I move from one environment to the other. Like, for example, going from being outside where it's relatively cold, and then maybe going into the tube where it's really warm, and I don't have the space to move and modify what I have. So it's really trying to address comfort in changing environments.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for attending. I hope you found it interesting.